This is the Gauntlet podcast. My name is Jason. I am joined by my co-host, Lowell Francis. Hi, Lowell.
Hello, Jason.
And this is our October game roundup. This month on the roundup, we are delighted to be joined by game designer and editor of Codex, Lauren McManamon. Hi, Lauren.
Oh my gosh, hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. I'm excited we finally have you on the show.
Yeah, same.
So we are going to talk about some of the games we played in October. We're going to take a look at the Gauntlet Hangouts calendar in November. And then we are going to end, as always, with Giving Me Life. I think I'm going to kick off, if you both don't mind.
Go ahead.
So I went to Big Bad Con this month. Lauren did as well. And at Big Bad Con, I ran 2 sessions of Cthulhu Dark Harlem Unbound. I played a very sexy sci-fi cheat-your-own-adventure. I played For the Queen, which is an in-development game by Alex Roberts. And that was pretty much my Big Bad Con experience. I had a pretty short time there because of my schedule. I couldn't go for all, 4 days it is. Gauntlet Con 2018, I ran Cthulhu Dark Harlem Unbound again for Gauntlet Games Now. I played SIG, Hydro Hackers, Monster of the Week, All Are Punished, which was amazing. And I ran a 3-session long con of The Between. And on Gauntlet Hangouts in October, because of all that other stuff, I just ran another playtest of The Between. So the game I'm going to talk about in just a little bit is my long con of The Between at Gauntlet Con. So I've talked about The Between before, and so I'm not going to go into all that, except to say that it is a dark, bloody, sexy game about Victorian monster hunters. Done. And monsters are often serial killers, not just literal monsters. I'm having a lot of fun with it. What I want to talk about is kind of the playtest process, because I know this is something you're always interested in, Lowell, so you might like this. Mm-hmm. I have run something like 39 sessions of the alpha playtest rules for The Between. And in the course of that, I have gotten tremendously good feedback. In some of the early playtests, like one of the ones that you participated in, Lauren, I was mostly focused on just watching the players play, and just watching players play my game with this particular rule set was very helpful for me to understand if the core concepts and the sort of central ideas and gameplay tech I was trying to work with was actually working. And so that was super helpful. In the later playtests, I started soliciting more active feedback from the players because I kind of knew that the basics worked. And so then I started soliciting like kind of more granular feedback. And I did a very, very long playtest, about 9 or 10 sessions with Tyler, Patrick, Agatha, and Fraser. And that was a very, very rich playtest experience. I got so much good feedback from them because they got to actually handle the game for a long time. And so the con game, the 3-session long con, was the first opportunity I had to incorporate all that feedback. Now, it wasn't formalized in a document, but I basically just kind of scratched out the old stuff and kind of, told them to write in the new stuff, basically, right? And so I got to try a lot of like suggestions that were made by the playtesters. I got to just kind of fiddle with some things on the GM side and play with the values of things and do different things. And boy, it worked. Like, it was good. The long con playtest was 3 sessions, 4 hours each. So it was a good 12 hours of play with the same 3 players. It was David Morrison, who's I don't want to say a new member of the community because he's been around for a long time, but it's the first time I played with him.
Yeah, he's great.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Ollie Jeffrey, who's of course fabulous, and Lucian Khan. Lovely Lucian, who always brightens one's day. And so they were great. And the playtest was so good because I was able to see a lot of the changes that were suggested by other playtesters like working, like it was a total like validation of like both my approach to running the playtests and for soliciting the feedback, and a validation of like what those other players had to say, right? Like there was one particular rule shift, which was a pretty big rule shift that Fraser recommended. And I remember thinking conceptually, I was like, oh, that in concept, that sounds right. That does sound like the right way to handle this. But I wouldn't know it until I did it. And then I incorporated it into the long con, and it worked beautifully. And so I just wanted to throw out there that I'm super happy with how the playtests are going. I'm very, very happy that people are loving my game so far. Ollie said on Discord, I'm going to just say this because it made me cry a little. Ollie said that it was, Ollie said that it was that the second session we played was like the best role-playing game session he'd ever been in, and that it was his favorite PBTA game since Monster Hearts. And I was like, yes, thank you for saying that.
Nice.
Like that gives me so much like energy, to like want to just push through and keep doing it. Of course, I don't think Ollie's played Girl Underground yet, so. Or Hearts of Wulin, but whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
I was watching the Discord for GauntletCon, and it was really satisfying seeing everyone's feedback after each session of the Between, because it was like, this game is so hot and sexy and dark and creepy. And I was like, yes, like so good to see that.
Yeah, all the comments were like, I want to have sex with the Between. And I was like, that's what I'm going for. Good. The game is unapologetically adult, right? And I love that about it. So it was a super gratifying experience for me. I mean, I'm a pretty confident person, right? Like I project confidence. I own confidence, right? That's kind of my thing. But like the Between is like one of those things where, a control freak like me doesn't know at the outset how people are going to like something, right? And I can't control whether they love it or like it, right? And so it is like as close as I get to being like kind of like, letting go of the rails or whatever, right? And so it's just been a super gratifying process. Yeah, and those 3 sessions they were amazing. They were so good. Like and it wasn't even because of the game so much. The players were fabulous. I like to think that the game, gave them permission to be fabulous, right? But the level of trust at the table was so high. The level of just really sinking their teeth into the game was really, really great. So I just wanted to kind of glow about that a little bit. It was just
nice. It
was just lovely. It was just so good. And I can't wait to share the game with people because, I'm aiming to have the beta done by January. Indeed, I have to have it done by January because Shane's running it. And so that's my timer, right? Like I have to have the beta in Shane's hands by Christmas at least, right? So I'll be kind of working on that. And hopefully the beta I intend for the beta to be like basically a quick start. Like I intend for it to be like a nice, polished, good looking, thing that people can take and really get it to their table and run it. But that's all I had to say about it.
Would you mind, you and Lauren, maybe saying just like maybe a couple of highlight experiences from Big Bad Con, since both of you were at that, and it's kind of a cool thing, and a lot of people don't get to go to this con that is gotten quite a bit of love.
Lauren, why don't you go?
Oh man, yeah, I have so many good things to say about my Big Bad Con experience. I guess firstly, it was my first one, so I had no idea what to expect, and yeah, I came out from it like kind of loving life and loving particularly our community, because I got to hang out with a lot of like cool, everyone in the Gauntlet is cool, but like a lot of people that I have a lot of experience, a lot of interactions with on our Slack, but I got to meet them in person for the first time. Like I was rooming with Toms, and that was where I learned that he and I are the same person, and that's a really bad thing because it means that he and I were up until like 4 a.m, getting 4 hours of sleep, and then gaming from 9 a.m. until like 4 a.m. the next day.
Tomes is an absolute fireball. Like I didn't know this about him. I know that Tomes is super hype about the Gauntlet. He's like one of our biggest advocates out there in the world, right? He's just constantly advocating for the Gauntlet. And of course, he set up the beautiful FAQ, which like the FAQ is incredible. Like, it's the most incredible thing. And he's done all that. But what I didn't know about Tomes until meeting him in person is he is so high energy. That guy knows how to like bring the party wherever he's at. I think Lauren will agree.
Oh yeah, totally. Including to our hotel room at like 5 a.m. That was like, I love you, Tomes, but it was messy. That was fantastic. Otherwise, in terms of the games I played, like Jason, I was in, I think, pretty much all of the games you were in, barring one of your Harlem games, and they were all spectacular. I got to experience like firsthand our Gauntlet play culture in person, which was like fabulous. So much like really great lift up play and people checking in to see if I was having my voice heard at the table as like a woman in a face-to-face con place. And like I have to give like a shout out to like Kurt Potts in particular, who I played a lot of games with, and he was there making sure that like I was being heard and my play was being like good times around and stuff. So yeah, really, really good.
Yeah, he's another one of these like really just high energy social butterfly type people, right? That's the funny thing. Like when I go to these conventions that a lot of people probably don't know about me, or maybe they've intuited but don't really understand, is I'm actually not. Like I go to the conventions, I am not a social butterfly. Like I am quite reserved. So I sort of like come to these conventions, you know, I have my schedule, I know what I'm going to be doing, and I'm mentally preparing for those things. And I've got a million other things in my brain going on, and I love to see everyone, but like for me, it's never like this, you know, oh, hey, blah, blah, blah. You know, I'm not that person. Right. And so I depend pretty strongly on folks like Tomes, on Lauren, on people I know to like kind of drag me, you know, drag me into joy. Right. Particularly for Big Bad Con. I was only there for Saturday and really just Friday and Saturday. I mean, I left early Sunday, so I wasn't there very, very long, but I arrived in a wretched mood. Like I arrived in a really bad mood, and it was a combination. It had nothing to do with Big Bad Con. It was a combination of like Kickstarter woes, and which is like so all consuming in your brain when you're doing one, and some work stuff and some other crap. And so I was just like in a really bad mood, and it took me a minute to kind of get out of that. I also arrived hungry because I made the mistake of like not eating before I got on my first plane. And so it took me a minute to get going. But once I did, I had a great time. I mean, the Big Bad Con is it's exceptionally well run. That was my major impression. It's a very, very well run con. And there is what I would call a legit community for Big Bad Con, right? I don't think you can say that about many conventions. A lot of conventions you go to, you know, Metatopia is networking, right? And Dreamation is like kind of significantly bigger than Big Bad Con. And so you feel a little bit more like anonymous, you know? Queen City Conquest was pretty great, but still fairly new. I think they're still kind of getting their feet under them, you know, but it was a lot of fun. But Big Bad Con feels like a legit community of people, like in the way that we are, right? Like it honestly felt like the face-to-face Gauntlet. And I think that's the best compliment I can give them, right? Like everyone there, like was there in a spirit of like sharing and kindness and love. And I think that was fabulous.
Oh, that's cool.
There was a couple of us Gauntleteers like Tomes and Yoshi and myself who actually went on Kurt's podcast Pixel Scandal. If you want to listen,
I watched
to
it. Yeah. It was long. It was like 2 hours long.
It was really long. There's a lot to like decompress. And my favorite part of that is like Tomes is totally appropriating my like self-indulgent bullshit TM. And there was a moment in that where he fully stole it from me, and I got really mad. Yeah, if you want to check that out to listen to some more like people who attended pixelscandal.com is where you can find that one.
Yeah, we'll link to it in the show notes. But yeah, I watched the whole thing. It was good. It was fun just to listen to you guys talk about it. So we got a little bit sidetracked there, but that was a great question, Lowell. Why don't we move to you, Lowell? We've been talking a lot. How was your October?
It was good. So off Gauntlet, played Urban Shadows, Trail of Cthulhu, 13th Age, and that Changing the Lost PBTA hack. And then on Gauntlet, ran Crossroads Carnival, Zombie World, Orun. I ran 3 4-hour sessions of Hearts of Wulin as one-shots for Gauntlet Con. And then the one game I played was 1,000 Arrows at Gauntlet Con, which I was very excited. There was another game I was signed up for, but it didn't make. But I was super glad I was able to do 1,000 Arrows.
On Kickstarter right now, actually.
Yeah. It like literally today it started as we're recording this. And I had seen some talk about this before, so I was very excited. So anyway, that's what I want to talk about. So 1,000 Arrows is a PBTA game, and it's covering the Sengoku period in Japanese history, which is also called the Warring States period. This is about the 15th to 17th century in Japan. And it's sort of the hype era for people looking at sort of classical Japanese material. And it's something I kind of know a little bit about. I've read quite a bit about, and I'm enough of a grognard that I have to admit at this point that I wrote a set of Japanese samurai warfare miniatures rules that I published many years ago that are out there.
Nice.
Geikoko Joe. I've stopped playing miniatures though. So anyway, this game aims to tell it's obviously still got personal stories with characters, but it also wants to tell sort of big scale stories of war and intrigue and high level drama. And it references, of course, Kurosawa and sort of Ran as one of its touchstones, and movies like Samurai Rebellion and manga like Path of the Assassin, and there's a whole set of rich touchstones here. And it's a game that has kind of interesting different levels of moves. And it is by James Mendez-Hose, who I met for the first time at Origins last year, who is really great, who's written for 7th Sea, both the Katai and the standard sort of stuff, some of the Middle Eastern source book, the Crescent Empire and stuff. And he does a really good job. So I was excited about that. And in fact, it was James Mendez-Hose that ran it for the con. So let me tell you what I dug about this game. One of the things is that thank goodness he had pre-gens, because it's kind of an involved character creation process. And he had a lot of carefully created and curated pre-gens to pick from, because it's sort of 2 playbooks that you combine together. It reminds me a little bit of Pig Smoke, and there's some other games we've seen that do this. And you have a role, which is like your profession or your occupation or your specialty. And then you have an allegiance, which is to your clan, your country, your school of thought, like your Confucian, or you're from one of the monasteries. And those come together. And in fact, in our game, we had a Confucian knight, we had a Nichiren secret agent, and a Shimazazu, one of the particular areas of Japan, clan farmer. And so there was a neat idea, and I like those kinds of tricks. A few other things I liked is that it's got your classic, okay, we're going to figure out what our attachments are to other people, and they actually have kind of a numerical value. It reminded me a little bit of Worldwide Wrestling in that it would kind of see what your heat is with other people. And as you interact with them, that can kind of go up. You use those bonds for some roles. And it was a neat little thing. And it kind of tied into, it's like in the same section as those bonds with other people, you have your wound track. And your wound track is not wounds, it's your attachment to yourself. And essentially, as you take damage, both physically and mentally, you kind of become more attached to yourself. You become sort of protective of it. And eventually you hit a point where you kind of get an obsession about that. And I didn't see that much in the play because we didn't really hit that, but I saw in the rules those mechanics, and that looked neat. I like that idea.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it ties into certain philosophical concepts that are cool. It has a really interesting set of moves. Some of them are very rich and very text dense, but they're all really striking. Like each of the characters, their moves that they had for them felt very evocative. The playbooks that I saw, some of them had really, really interesting approaches. And it ties into the game itself, that the game itself tries to kind of go for, this intimate stuff and then this bigger scale thing. Like the assumption is that all the characters have a force, like an army of some kind, whether that's a staff of academics or a group of spies or, a group of arquebusiers or knights. And that in addition to you doing things, you're also telling them to do things. And so there's this interesting thing that I had when I first looked at the moves. I was trying to figure out, okay, well, these all look like big scale moves. And I'll give you an example here if I can. So there's a move, Order the Troops, where you command someone to achieve an objective, right? And I was like, okay, well, that's obviously just an army scale move, but it gets used in a couple of different ways. Like you kind of use that if you're yourself trying to do some small scale things, like moves that are framed as big scale operations also then get translated down to, your sort of personal level. And so there's some interesting stuff there. I want to say overall I liked it, but I kind of just got a little bit of a taste of it because it's a dense preview version that we saw. Like 18 pages, and there's a lot of text in there. And, even though we kind of went through pre-gens, we still had a lot of kind of having to look through our characters and figure things out and come to, know what was going on in it. So this kind of brings me to my second point is I'm wondering when you're going into a new PBTA system, especially ones that like have a really unconventional genre like this or like Pig Smoke, or have a real historical specificity like Blackout does, or even Night Witches, or have a kind of like mechanical density like even The Veil.
Yeah, very dense, yeah.
I'm wondering what's the like best player practice for, when you sit down at a table with these PBTA games, what's the best player practice for how you get it? Like, how do you learn it? Because I'm going to honestly tell you, especially because this was online and I'm seeing it kind of at a distance, I was really lost for a while in this. And I think partially because I mostly run, I maybe didn't have the experience as a player of going, okay, I need to look at this. I need to figure this out. So I don't know, because I know you both have played a lot of different PBTA games. What's your sense of when you're playing, what do you do? I mean, what do you look at first? What do you figure out?
Lauren, why don't you take that? Because I actually GM a lot as well. I rarely get to play.
I think I was tallied up. I played like 130 games on the calendar last year.
You are the most experienced player of the three of us. Yes. Please take it away.
That's a really good question. And I guess I can... I come at it from like two minds as well, just being someone who's designing a game that's like PBTA and having gotten some feedback from players about how they approach like moves and that kind of thing and say like Girl Underground. But as a player, I approach playing much like I approach life, which is I'll just throw myself at this game and be like, this is what I want to do. Like, can I do this? Is there a move I need to do it? And kind of just tell like my story bullshit fiction that I want to see. And then if I get some pushback from like the facilitator, or there's some mechanical thing I gotta do before I can do the cool story thing I want to do, then navigate it that way. But of course, I think that's only true for if you have some understanding of the genre, because I've definitely been in those games where I haven't had a good understanding of like the media touchstones and that kind of thing, and I felt a bit lost in what I can do. And I think in that case, then I look really to the moves to see like what am I like quote like allowed to do in this like game space, right? And I think that like specifically with some really valuable feedback I got from Ryan, who's in like the Gauntlet space quite frequently, where he said when I look to PBTA moves, I consider that to be like the canvas from which I can do my stuff. Like if I'm assuming that if it's not on like the moves list, then I can't do it. So that's the thing that I've had in the back of my mind as well, like as a player approaching new PBTA kind of games. But I suppose that's I
think that's right, because I think part of my problem was when I went to kind of look at the basic moves, because they have this multi-layer, like they're doing a bunch of different things. I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing in this game. It took me a while to get that. And I mean, this is all a very rough draft. I mean, this is all the early playtest stuff. So it's actually no comment on Thousand Arrows, which I love and I'm backing, but more about how maybe you need to like give some guidance, or you need to kind of cut it down for the players as to what's going on.
Another thing that you reminded me of was Night Witches, which is I've played a lot of and love a lot. They have sections on historical notes that you can hit upon in your game, both in terms of what happened as well as like navigating queer stories in Night Witches, which is a big thing, and just having like little, like not massive sections, but little bite-sized chunks of like history you can use to sort of like hook into it. I find that very useful.
Yeah, I was going to say, just to piggyback off what you just said, Lauren, in Monster Hearts, I think the like playing the werewolf, playing the witch, playing the, those little like bits of text that Avery includes, I think that just from a sort of design standpoint is incredibly smart. I think it's incredibly smart, and I think it tells you a lot. I think that a good Powered by the Apocalypse game goalposts its play via the moves, but I also think you should be able to sort of do everything with the basic moves, right? I'm not going to go into this because I've talked about it a million times, but like, I do think there's like this sort of 3 layers of fictional specificity with moves, right? Like there's the basic, there's the playbook, and then there's like the custom, right? And I think that each of them helps like narrow the fiction and narrow your play considerably. The Veil is a great example. I'm glad you brought that up because it is quite dense, right? Like the moves are dense. If you don't know cyberpunk, I mean, it is like heavy cyberpunk, right? And if you don't know cyberpunk super well, you can get lost in it, right? So that is a thing. You know, whenever I'm teaching a game or whenever I'm playing with someone for the first time, a particular game, what I often do is I just say, and this was more in a face-to-face context, like when I was, you know, early days of Dungeon World or whatever, I would say, okay, here's your playbook and, you know, fill this out. That's great. Here's the basic move sheet. Okay, awesome. And now set those aside. Let's not think about those for right now. And let's just talk about our story. And you just tell me what you're doing. And then if a move gets triggered, it gets triggered. That requires me as the GM to know the move's pretty cold, right? But I think that's one way of doing it. I mean, my own sort of like design philosophy, and people who've looked at the Between will know this, is to strip away, right? Like I like to strip things away. And because I like a game that lets you just talk about what you're doing and kind of, as long as you have a few little like genre touchstones, you kind of just say what you're going to do. And then hopefully the framework of the game supports that, right? Will give you something to play with and something to do. But it's a super complicated thing, right? Like I think Lauren's point about genre is probably the most important one, right? Like if you don't know the media touchstones, it can be very difficult.
And I think both this and Pig Smoke operate in several different spaces. Like we've got all those academic moves, but there are also the day-to-day moves and the teaching moves in Pig Smoke that make that a challenge to just kind of sit down and go to. And here, because you're not certain at first, the moves kind of present an illusion. I think, maybe taking those away from the player and making it, you know, let's go to the narrative and then we'll introduce those is a good idea. I'd also say I really like it when they put a player agenda. We've seen more games do that. You know, Rich and Rach talked about that on Plus One Forward. And I like that way to tell me, okay, here's what you're supposed to be doing in the game, what you're expected sort of generally, and then this playbook is doing these things. I appreciate that. Yeah,
that's something that we've adopted for Girl Underground in particular, because I guess I'll get to this later, but in that game, there's like a shared character. Like everyone gets to play the girl, and we made a player agenda for that playbook specifically, so everyone knows like what they should be doing if they get to a point and they're like, oh shoot, I don't know how this like character should be behaving in a situation. I think myself and other players have found that quite useful.
Another thing I want to say is I love it when on those playbooks, if you've got the stats, you put like by them, what moves do these go to? So that when I'm deciding where to put my stats at, if they have set stats for set moves, so that I can go, oh, okay, here's the fight stuff. If I want to fight, I've got to put this in these, you know, these numbers, because like they have 5 stats in this game, and it's earth, water, fire, wind, and void. And those aren't approaches. Those are tied to specific moves and tied to specific ways that you do those moves. And we start with those set, but it took me a while to figure out, okay, am I strong in this or am I weak in this? You know, because that does shape your choices, because you obviously want to go what's effective, or even what your playbook moves are doing. So all those indicators that help me go, okay, I ought to be making this pick. I ought to be making this choice. This is what I can do. I now realize, having done this and having kind of felt a little overwhelmed, that I go, oh, you know what? I need to be better about that when I'm presenting PBTA games to people. I need to be looking at how the game actually shows itself to the player. And if it's not giving them those hints, I need to provide those myself, or I need to do, as you said, Jason, get those things out of the way to just go to, let's talk about what we're doing.
Let's just talk.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, for me, the number one thing always that's easy to forget, actually very easy to forget, is that PBTA games are conversation, right? And you can never go wrong by falling back on that. You know, the conversation and a few basic moves go a long, long way.
Yeah. I had one of those great moments with the Hearts of Wulin on Sunday where we were playing. And then I said to Darren, okay, Darren, well, that sounds like you're doing this. And he's like, oh, wait. Oh, Oh, we have to roll? Yeah, I'd forgotten that we were doing a game where we had to do that.
This is a game. Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. I do want to say this is a cool subject matter. I'm really excited about somebody doing a kind of in-depth PBTA game within this area. It's got great new PBTA tech. I love seeing new mechanics. And I also trust Hodes to handle cultural issues. He's been very adamant about cultural sensitivity and trying to handle this well and treating it well. And I think he's a person who can do that from what I've seen. And it is him and it's Brendan Taylor from Galileo Games. So these are two smart, conscious designers.
Super nice guys, too.
Yeah.
I've met them at Metatopia and stuff. They're great. Awesome. Lauren, how was your October?
Oh, hectic.
Oh, my God. Look at this list on the notes. Holy cow.
Let me tell you about hectic Octobers.
Yeah.
No, please.
No, just a light October for me in terms of like games. Off-Gauntlet games include Autumn of the Ancients, which I got to play with Jim Martin. That was super great. That table had like 5 women at it, and that was like a treat, I have to say.
Nice.
But I also got to play 16 Candles by Christopher Gray, which is kind of like inverted 10 candles about high school hope and drama, which is super neat.
Oh, how interesting. Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Also played the Starcrossed LARP, Harlem Unbound with yourself, Jason. Pack of Strays by our own Philip Wessels. It was a super fun game. Becoming Inheritance for the Queen. I think everyone played for the Queen at Big
Everyone
Bad Con.
played for the Queen at Big Bad Con. Yes. Tomes made sure every human played for the Queen.
Yeah, I played that about, I think, 3 or 4 times while I was there.
Wow.
So, yeah, intense. And I also played that cheat your own adventure game about sexy aliens space time. So it was super good. And then on the Gauntlet, I was like, I probably have quite a quiet October for on Gauntlet games because Big Bad Con, but nope. Did Bell 2020 Euro with the Fraser. That's been such a gonzo blast of like retro cyberpunk fun times.
Nice.
As well as for Gauntlet Con, I ended up playing Fargo using Christopher Gray's The Great American Novel, I guess like system, which is like currently in beta testing, which is super great, very like genre agnostic, character driven storytelling kind of stuff. So I call it like RPG fanfic. I'm like, cool. I want to play a game about like, I put like In the Flesh, which is a BBC TV show, super live, put that on the calendar for November using Great American Novel. So I'm looking forward to testing that out. Oh gosh, what else? Oh, I played Wolfspell, Seco Creek Vigilance Committee, and I ran Girl Underground, which is by myself and Jesse Ross. Also played Sig by Jason Pitt, and Nuclear Night School by Co-op Pots, which, Jason, I think is your jam. It's like,
really?
It's like
Wow.
ridiculous 80s nostalgia, like beer and pretzels monster hearts. Like,
Okay.
each playbook is sort of typed, like sort of your wizard warrior kind of thing, but they're typed to cliques. So like the mages, I played the geek, and I think it's based on Savage Worlds. So it uses like the Benny system.
Oh, it is Savage Worlds. Yeah, I remember Kurt talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so like I got rewards for when my geek like lost their glasses at the like worst possible moment, and my geek also like fainted at the sight of blood. So whenever we got into like a conflict, I just feel like, oh, I fainted. I can't say enough good stuff about that game. It was my last Gauntlet Con game, and it was like just what I needed because it was very ridiculous high school making out, petty bullshit fights, pushing vampires into the pool to like fight them and like taking shots and being dumb. It was, yeah. So that was my October.
So what do you want to talk about in depth?
Yeah, I mean, I had such a plethora of stuff I could have talked about, but I ended up going for Girl Underground since that's been on my mind a lot, both in terms of like writing it and then getting to playtest it and having kind of similar like playtesting experience that you were talking about, Jason, with the Between, getting to like reincorporate some really good feedback I'd had in previous iterations. I guess I should say what it is, which is kind of, I guess it's like a PBTA game designed by myself and Jesse Ross, following the story of a girl on her journey through a fantastical wonderland with her friendly companions, very inspired by Alice in Wonderland and The Wizard of Oz and Labyrinth and other similar stories. And I guess at its heart, it really aims to tell a girl's like coming of age story about self-identity and like discovery and growing up and being a member of our broader society and what that what that means for you and yourself. And then I guess mechanically, we're trying to represent that story through like a belief system where the girl develops her beliefs and worldviews about the spaces she explores, like going through Wonderland, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, I've said it before in other places, but never on the podcast, I think Girl Underground is a very, very exciting game. It is, I think this story that it's doing, this like story about like, that's kind of fundamentally positive and about girls is seldom explored in role-playing games, right? You know, we got like the horrible woman story in Bluebeard's Bride, right? But we haven't gotten like the good one ever, right? And so many like similar stories or other types of games that like have this more like positive youthful spin ultimately tend to be centered around boys, right? Like even like the kids on bikes games and stuff, like we always automatically kind of think of boys. And so I am very fond of Girl Underground. I think it's going to be a big deal.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that was definitely one of like my personal goals, was getting to play a lot of really great games like The Watch and like Bluebeard's Bride, and a lot of sort of feminine horror type games that explore the really like hard things about being a woman. And I was like, I was so pumped to work on this with Jesse and add to that sort of tapestry of voices about women's experiences to sort of bring something different to the table.
Well, so how's it going? I mean, what are you digging about the game so far?
Yeah, I'm digging a lot. I guess what I wanted to focus on in terms of what I'm digging about it is like, oh man, character generation is really singing. It's been something that has sung since we first sort of conceptualized this game and came up with these playbooks. And I guess I guess I'll roll back a bit and talk about the process of character generation. But in our game, collectively players create this girl character based off of prompts like, what does your voice sound like? And your family has love but lacks time or money and that kind of thing, which is quite cute, because on the playbook, if your, say, family has love but lacks time, then your name is Patience, and that kind of cute thing. We also have things like, what do you want to be when you like grow up? And we've had so many like really great responses to that have varied from like science wizard to witch and doctor and teacher and like president of Earth. So it's nice to see people like really, I guess, like drill back into that childhood time of like, like my brother in particular wanted to be a pterodactyl when he grew up. So it's nice to sort of like see my memory of like childhood, I guess, like sort of encapsulated in these like questions we put into that playbook.
I just wanted to be a gorgeous lady of wrestling, so I was very disappointed when I wasn't able to be one.
And then players also get to create their own like companion character who goes with this girl on her journey. And these like playbooks represent archetypes within the genre. So there's like our beastie, who's a tricksy like Cheshire cat kind of type person. We have like our construct, who's our living object, sort of tin man, who's trying to navigate like their self-identity and what they are and are they alive and all those like great questions. And we also have like the ogre, who represents ideas around like power and shame and having a lot of presence, but not having the confidence to like have a voice and that kind of thing, kind of like your cowardly lion. So these are I guess like playbooks that are deeply flawed at their heart, and a lot of their story is trying to either find the thing that they really need in their life or a thing about themselves that will make them feel like whole. So there's this sort of like neat, I guess, parallel journey that the companions and the girl get to go on. And I think why I'm delighted about this so much is it is just so amazing seeing the fantastic characters that people come up with when they get these playbooks, right? Like everyone's imagination just goes nuts. Like Patrick Knowles played at this Gauntlet Con, and he had this like glorious Thunderbird mythic who like commanded thunder and lightning, and he just like, as a player, just really good at bringing these evocative, like rich, deep descriptions to the table. So like he sort of like, his presence sort of grew as he was like, I am like this Thunderbird, you shall do what I say, kind of like was very, very like electric to see at the table as well. I
Nice.
Loved everything about that. Oh, Matthias played in that game too, and he had this so many good ideas. He played a squirrel who was like our beastie, and they hoarded like electronics, like particularly electronic tulips. So we had a lot of great scenes where squirrel was like being chased down by this local farmer who grew like electronic tulips and like sunflowers, and had a good like conflict between the two of them there, which I guess it kind of brings me to another thing I'm super digging about it, which is the sort of dreamy surrealism of Wonderland. Like every time I've played, it's just been like such a fantastic, weird, timey-wimey, like drug-fueled experience. And I love getting to see like the players' imaginations like run wild. It's I think partially because it's a genre everyone is so familiar with that they're like, oh cool, I get this. Like I just give me the world and I can like run and make it super weird and creepy.
What I think is so great, I'm sorry to cut you off real quick,
no,
but what I think is so great is, you know, this is not the first time in role-playing games we've gotten a Wonderland or Oz type setting, right? I mean, there is the Gardens of Yin, which we've covered on Fear of a Black Dragon. There is A Red and Pleasant Land. There are, you know, other like, you know, setting things like that. But they're always like, we never get like that story, like the story of like the girl or the story of the coming of age story. It's always like a dungeon crawl, but in Wonderland, right? Or it's always like killing the creatures of Wonderland, right? Like it's never.
Or it's very tilted to very young kids. We've got a lot of these kind of journey stories that are for
right?
really young kids. Yeah. Or if they do Wonderland, they're like, oh, we just want to do a Wizards of Oz role-playing game, and so here's all the stuff, and we've already mapped it out for you. Enjoy.
Or they take it and they make it like super dark and like political, right? So like we're doing like the politics of Oz or whatever. We never get like the coming of age story in role-playing games, and I think that's like what's so exciting about this for me.
Yeah, it's been very delightful too watching people like take on that story and sort of like push it quite a bit. Like one thing I haven't talked about is manners. But that's sort of part of like the belief system that we've worked into this game that I'm really digging on, which is each playbook at the moment, it might change, we'll see, but at the moment, each playbook has what we've termed like manners, which I guess represent sort of kind of patriarchal constructs that girls are expected to adhere to when they're like younger. So there's like sort of young girls must never speak up like to their elders, and like young girls must never soil or dirty their clothes. And when the girl breaks one of those manners, or in our case, like doesn't mind her manners, then she gets to write a belief about sort of how she feels about this social construct that she's had to adhere to throughout her life. So there's been lots of times where it's like really sweet too, because it's often like the girl overcoming these manners to like help save her companion. So like, there's been a couple of times where we've had a companion who's been chained up or has been trapped in some way, and the girls just like run in and like torn her dress up with thorns or that kind of thing to sort of tear their companion like out of these thorny vines that have trapped them in there. And it's so great seeing like the girl overcome that and then say like, I believe that it's okay to get yourself like dirty to help your friends out, that kind of thing. Like it's really, like you said, it's sort of a nice like optimistic like coming of age kind of story that's really focused on, I guess, like our protagonist's subjectivity and like her perspective on how she sees herself within the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's awesome. Well, so what would you say are like some roadblocks right now in the design process?
Oh, man.
I'm saying this as your dev editor, by the way.
Yes, yeah. I think we're at a place where there are a lot of neat things we've built into this game, like structurally or mechanically, from like a game design perspective. But I think now we're at that stage of trying to trim out stuff to really make sure that our mechanics reinforce like our design goals. And for me, that means a lot of like where agency lies in the system, or I guess that's the thing that I have in the back of my mind too. Like, since it's a PBTA game, how do you manage like the snowball and failure and stuff without commenting on like disempowering young girls, or what? How can you like sort of be empowered but also like fail in like sort of the PBTA framework? So I feel like I have a lot of thinking to do around trying to make sure that the mechanics are aligned with the message that we're trying to get across from like our design perspective.
Yeah, awesome. I think everybody listening to this will agree. It sounds amazing. I mean, what just what are your kind of like final takeaways, particularly from the game that you ran at GauntletCon?
Yeah. Oh man. So I personally am like really enjoying this exercise of structuring agency into the game to reinforce like the discursive themes that are going on. It's so hard, but it's really neat. Like, I think where it's really neat is like seeing it work. Yeah, I know it's nice. It's really nice seeing the design process like follow through on the move. Like, I think that's what I'm really thinking about it. And then, yeah, I think as we've said before, another takeaway is this: like, this has been such a fantastic opportunity to really add to the body of indie TTRPGs that are specifically about women's experiences, and giving kind of like a unique voice to really flesh out that tapestry to show like a different perspective on what it is to like be a girl and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
I can't
fantastic.
wait to go down and tell Sherry about this, because she's going to flip her lid when she hears about this. So this is the kind of thing that she absolutely adores. She's very excited about these kinds of ideas.
Oh, fantastic.
So I'm developmental editor on the game, right? I've been kind of working in a, not like in a super direct way with Jesse and Lauren on this, but I've had my say. And like, I've seen the game through several, revisions now. And I think the work that's going on here from a design standpoint is so good. There is so much like good play ethos built into the game, right? Like, this is a Powered by the Apocalypse game that is clearly designed by people who play the system a lot, who understand role-playing game mechanics very well because they play a lot in the Gauntlet. And to sort of see that is like so, it's like so A+ for me. Like, I just love that. Right? Like, it's like my favorite thing, And so just being able to like just kind of be near that and to watch it and observe it, how it's all kind of shaping up, has been really a real pleasure. And people should be excited about Girl Underground. It's going to be dope as fuck. Like, it's going to be so good. We've got bubbling up in our spaces are so many cool things, right? And Girl Underground is definitely one of them. Is there anything else you want to say about it, Lauren?
No, it's thank you so much. That means a lot to hear, both like that Sherry will dig it and that you're digging it, Jason. And I'm very excited about it. So yeah, looking forward to carrying that motivation through to the next iteration of designing it.
Awesome. Let's go take a look at November. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the November calendar and highlight a few games that are coming up. I'm going to throw out Kingsport 62, being run by Catherine Rahman. It's actually Monster Hearts Kingsport 62. Kat is a lovely person, a friend of mine, and I've talked about her Kingsport series before, but I am extra excited about it because Kat is writing a stretch goal for the Codex Kickstarter that is going to put the various like Kingsport materials together so that you can kind of play in your own time hopping Kingsport Monster Hearts game, like starting presumably with, I think it starts in like 52, which is like a brand new thing. And then we'll be jumping around to 76 and 1692 and all the others. So I am just super thrilled about that. And people seem to really be loving it. So that makes me happy.
I actually want to say about Kat, I want to thank Kat. I want to give her a shout out because she sent me a bunch of stuff on how to run Trail of Cthulhu that was hugely,
she knows it well.
Hugely helpful. And I hope that she'll put together a blog post with some of this advice because it was great.
Yeah, she's like razor sharp on that. She helped us when Tom wrote that David Bowie thing that went into Codex Glamour. Kat like kind of proofread it and stuff and made sure it all worked great, and it was very helpful. Lowell, what do you want to highlight on the calendar?
So there's a game called We Used to Be Friends, which apparently is a GM-less mystery game in the vein of Veronica Mars. I'm running Bubble Gumshoe in December, so I kind of maybe want to watch this. I'm always curious about mystery games. I love them. And a GM-less one, I'm kind of excited to see what this is going to be like. And Larry, who I've run for a number of times, is a joy to play with. And this is a game by Jonathan Lavallee. So I hope he records it, but if not, I hope he maybe writes up something about what the sessions were like.
Pretty sure they covered that on Plus One Forward recently,
too.
Didn't they?
I missed that episode.
I think they did. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was one of Rachel's. Yeah, I could be wrong, but she had Jonathan Lavallee on for something. I'm pretty sure it was We Used to Be Friends. I was in the middle of I was in the middle of the throes of Kickstarter, so I probably wasn't paying super close attention. But Lauren, what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I picked Weave, which is being run by Noella Handley and was written by Jay Isles. I think it was like a finalist for Game Chef 2017 as well, which is super neat. But I picked it partially because it's all about mages conducting like coming of age rites and that kind of thing. So as you're traveling the world, so I was like, ooh, that sounds like super appropriate for Girl Underground. But then it's, as I understand, like a diceless storytelling game on top of it. So it's like my brand of like story game based stuff that I super love. Nice. So I think I'm in a couple of those games and I'm super looking forward to playing it. I'm also really interested to see how Noelle is going to run it online, since as I understand, it's got some like crayon drawing aspects to it as well. So pumped for that.
Cool. Let's go to Giving Me Life. Hi, listeners. I wanted to let you know that the newest issue of Codex, Joy 2, is now available in the Gauntlet's $4 Patreon feed. It's a sequel to the original Codex Joy, and it's terrific. Here is what you'll find inside. Storm Riders, a rules-light game inspired by the action-packed fantasy cartoons of the 1980s, such as Masters of the Universe and Thundercats. A Feast of Jovial Moments, a collection of evocative images for Swords Without Master and other swords and sorcery games. Grandma's Drinking Song, a hilarious songwriting LARP that tells the story of a family of Jewish bootleggers in 1930s New York City. True Beauty, a framework that recontextualizes the game Monster Hearts 2 to be about young queer people of color in the ballroom scene of 1980s Harlem. Our miscellany, 36 local holidays and celebrations, 5 original illustrations, and a gorgeous custom layout by Jake Householder. You can get Codex Joy 2 by making a $4 or higher pledge on the Gauntlet Patreon by November 30th. As a bonus, you will also receive the original Codex Joy. And a quick reminder that back issues of Codex can be found on DriveThruRPG. Thanks. It's Giving Me Life. Lowell, it's Giving You Life.
So my niece is in her mid-20s, and we don't have kids, so she's kind of been our pseudo-kid. She lived with us for a while, and we've gotten her into playing RPGs, and she plays with this other group that does like Pathfinder and 5e and stuff. And she's gotten the opportunity to run for them, and she was like, hey, could I run Hearts of Wulin for them? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. And, I tear up when I think about this, that this is what she wanted to run. This is it's a game she loves. It's something I kind of actually wrote a little bit because I knew she loved the genre so much. And I ran it for her. So it's just, I'm so happy that she's doing that.
Aw.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Lauren, what's Giving You Life?
Oh man, the hashtag QueerGauntlet that you did gave me so much life.
Oh, me
Yeah.
too.
So good.
Yeah, like it was super great. I got to celebrate my own queerness and like all the queer stories that I've contributed to like during my time at Gauntlet, because I think like every game I've played and I've had a queer character because I just love romance storylines. And then it was really, really great, like learning a lot about just how queer our community is. Like there are a bunch of people I guess didn't know how queer they were until I saw their names like pop up like on the like retweets you were doing or like on the hashtag itself, and I was like, oh, that's so great! Like, gave me so much life to like celebrate our very queer community, I guess.
It was an awesome thing, and it was like I did the hashtag, and I kind of did that like I kind of call out to the community like, hey, let's, if you want to opt into this and tell me about yourself, I'll tweet about it so we can have some visibility. It was honest. It was a response to the thing that Trump had done a couple days before that memo, and like that was basically trying to or purports to erase the legal existence of trans people in this country, right? And I was just so infuriated by it. I mean, it just made me so angry and distraught. And I think like what I needed was to say really loudly, like in this space at least, we're not here for that, and this is us, and it was good. It was a really great day. Like it was probably the highlight of my October. It was not even the Kickstarter ending. Like it was just like that day was so fabulous. So I'm glad you got so much life out of it, Lauren. The thing giving me life is the Mercy Falls campaign is giving me life. So the very last stretch goal on the Kickstarter was a goal that I actually didn't think we would hit. I kind of threw it out there as like a pie in the sky thing.
Up to 2 days before that, I was like, oh, that's too bad that we're not going to get that goal.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I don't think we're going to hit it. And, but if we do, hey, that'd be awesome. And so what it is on Pocket Size Play, we have our Monster Hearts AP set in Mercy Falls, and, Lauren and Lowell both in different capacities have been on that. And it's got a nice little following. People seem to love it. It's personally one of my favorite things I've ever done in role-playing games. And so Lauren and I are going to, the goal was if we hit it, Lauren and I are going to we were going to write a campaign of Mercy Falls. So like you would be able to use different games, not just Monster Hearts, but also Monster Hearts, to tell different aspects of the story of Mercy Falls, its history, its culture, and that kind of thing, as well as having some system agnostic setting details that you could use. And I didn't think we would hit the goal. I remember Lauren, Lauren was like so excited, like, oh man, like that, thanks for, inviting me to do that and all that stuff. And I was like, yeah, you were the first person I thought of, and da. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I don't think we're actually going to hit the goal, right? Like, it was like, I don't think we're going to hit it. Like, it was a real, boy, wouldn't this be cool, right? And but we did. We hit it. We hit it with a little bit of money to spare, and it was trench warfare to get there. I have never hustled for something so hard in my life. Like, it was like, I mean, every dollar at the end was like, we need to hit this goal, people. So I'm just delighted. I'm happy that Lauren and I get to work on it together. And
very cool.
I was going to say, it meant a lot to me because Mercy Falls was like my intro into the Gauntlet, right?
The Gauntlet, I know.
Yeah. Like, I first started listening to the Pocket Size Play episodes and got super hooked and was like, oh man, I have to play with these people, these creative geniuses who were so giving and generous. And then getting to play in a Mercy Falls campaign setting was I thought that was going to be the highlight of my Mercy Falls career. And then
and now you get to write for Mercy Falls.
I get to write for it.
It's awesome.
Ridiculous.
That's so cool. I mean, I suspect we will also lean on some of the other scholars of Mercy Falls, like Garrett and Fraser, because Garrett probably, apart from me, Garrett probably knows Mercy Falls better than anybody, right? And Lauren, you as well. I mean, Garrett's super knowledgeable about the whole mythos and the lore of the world, right? So I'm just super excited about it. Well, listeners, that's our show. If you'd like to get in touch with us, we are on Twitter at Gauntlet RPG. We still have a G Plus community, maybe not for much longer, but we do. It's go to the community section of G Plus and search for the Gauntlet. You'll find us there. We have a website. It's gauntlet-rpg.com. And we are on Patreon at patreon.com/Gauntlet. Lowell, thanks so much.
Oh, thank you.
And Lauren, thanks so much for being on the show.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
Awesome. And listeners, thanks for listening. Take care.